This is what the barrel stand looked like in the upright position holding the barrels. And you can see the big tank back in the background and the dump tanks. This is how we do the drain in the bottom. Somebody has to hold, this is standard French drain or field sewer line or whatever you want to call it. You have to use one of the slices and not the one with the holes. One of the holes leaks gravel, one of the slices doesn't. This is the completed system, and we were using a variety of different style barrels just to see what worked and what didn't work. This is another view of it. And that's the end.
Question.
Yes?
On the fish, how do you maintain, I guess, a constant temperature, or how do you monitor that?
Yes, I'll address that. A lot of people want to raise tilapia, and that's good because tilapia are fast growers. They taste good. They're not like that junk we get from China. But they have one limitation in Texas, and we're right on the border of that particular line. Except for one variety that comes from the Rocky Mountains who go belly up dead at 44 degrees, the rest of them die at 50 degrees. So when the water temperature hits 50 degrees, they go belly up. So I don't suggest people raising tilapia unless you're serious about heating your tank, putting the whole thing in a greenhouse or that entire system. You can raise bluegills, you can raise crappie, you can raise bass, you can raise catfish. I personally raise carp. Carp are bulletproof, you know. Everybody goes, "Ew, well, carp, you know." Well, I don't like fried fish to start with. I always steam mine, pick them up to the backbone, shake them, all the meat falls off, and you eat it.
Actually, there's different methods if you want to raise the type of fish. That way you can keep a consistent temperature. You can have the tanks above ground. You can insulate the tanks. You can heat them. You can use pipes in the ground to pull the air through in order to keep 55 degrees, the air coming through, which will cool in the summer and heat in the winter, as well as choosing the different varieties that'll work in the situation you have. It's just a matter of how much energy do you want to use to grow the fish.
So the other questions? Questions on permaculture? Questions on aquaponics?
I have silly questions, like in that big project you did in Burnett, what did they end up growing there?
We ended up growing koi and carp. Koi and carp are essentially the same fish, just one of them's pretty colored and the other one's not.
What about the vegetables?
For the vegetables, the
yes.
lady that took it over went ahead and didn't use the system.
Yeah.
So it's sitting there looking
It's sitting
about
there,
like it is
yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
but we grew everything in it, and you use the same seasons as you do in your regular garden.
Do these water tanks need to be cleaned periodically?
Actually, no.
No.
I've never had to clean one of my water tanks. The pump system at the very bottom, and I like those IBC containers because if you've ever looked inside one, they have a natural slope down toward that big valve. And if you drop that pump down the bottom, it sucks all that solids out. Occasionally, in the dump barrel, you have to clean the bottom. It'll get like 2 inches deep. But other than that, no. One of the guys reported after 6 or 8 years, he finally had to clean his grow beds. But he was raising papaya, 2 papaya trees and a half of a 55-gallon barrel, and I ate the papayas off of it. I know it sounds incredible, but I got pictures of it. So I would have never done it, but he did. And I think he just got root bound in the whole thing. I think when he picked it up, it was just 800 pounds of roots. Yes?
Is there any bacteria concern or anything like that?
No. No.
Well, there are bacteria in the system, but they're the beneficial bacteria.
Okay.
They're the bacteria that turn the ammonia that the fish put in the water, then the bacteria turns it into nitrites, and then there's another bacteria that take and feed on those nitrites and turn them into nitrates. And then that's what the plants can pull up and eat. And that's part of the full cycle of the product. If you're familiar with ponds and pond terminology, then this is a biofilter. And many people in the pond groups use the biofilters to keep their ponds clean, and they put a variety of plants in there. We've just shifted a little bit because the growing the vegetables are more of what we want to do. So that way we're using the biofilter as the main part of our system and the fish pond is a secondary. Now, if you like the big decorative fish ponds, these type of units can be added to that. So that way you get the benefits of both worlds. You get your decorative nice pond with your big fancy fish, and you also get the vegetables on the backside that you can grow and eat.
So if you want to think of it, it's just a giant biofilter.
The bacteria you were talking about, those are naturally occurring, you don't have to introduce those?
They kind of introduce themselves, and it's like starting up a new fish tank. That you can buy bottles of starter from the pet stores or pond stores, or you can get a handful of gravel from someone else's system. Some people will take things from the river and introduce it, but there's others that are concerned about parasites and other problems with the fish doing that. So the stuff from the store is sterilized, or if you just let the system sit long enough, when you put a few fish in, you're going to bring some of that bacteria in the water with the fish.
Yes.
Are there kits available, or do you have to build your own?
No.
Well, there are kits
Yes, actually
available.
they are.
There are kits available on the internet, and the kit that builds a system similar to what we have out here is like $1,200.
Wow.
And you can build it yourself if you can scrounge the lumber up. Especially, you know, when San Antonio does their set out on the curve day, you can run around and pick up everybody's old decks.
That's happening in Monte Vista right now, just in case you guys are looking. Right now,
Oh,
right
okay.
now.
Yeah.
Next week or so.
But we do have some people that are showing interest in building them here for other people.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We have
Also-
one here, which,
Right.
which Paul's gonna show you, and we have a large space, we have about 10 acres. I encourage you, if you'd like to use our space, go ahead. You need access to a small amount of electricity, and so
Yes.
we're gonna figure that
And
out.
we designed one system, and we're going to show that when we do this large class, is I've designed a mechanical wind pump, just like a windmill, that you can build for $60 instead of spending, what is it, where the air motor's selling for $10,000 now? Because all the yuppies stuck them in their yards, not hooked up anything. Well, we won't- Yes,
That's what I was wondering too about using solar. You can hook up your
Yes,
pump to just
yes.
like a solar panel.
That's
right.
it's easy to do.
That-
I'll tell you the basic requirements for a 6 or 8 barrel system is 2 75-watt panels, 4 6-volt golf cart batteries, and just your simple cheap build
DC
pump
pump.
out of Walmart. Yeah, and that'll run, even if you get 6 cloudy days, it'll still be running at the end of the 6th day. It's kind of overkill,
Okay.
but on the other hand, you know, if you only have 2 6-volt batteries and you run 4 days of no light, well, you're gonna lose your fish. That's what's important about this system is that a pump keeps running.
Okay.
That's the only fallacy of the whole deal, but we don't raise for fish, and so I don't go to the high concentrations. Now, you would think that you would need a high concentration of fish to have the nitrates to, say, do tomatoes, but I've run 20 tomato plants out of a system that has 6 goldfish this long in it. And inversely, you can run 200 goldfish, and it will still handle it.
Paul, speaking of goldfish, and when you use decorative non-food fish, can they get too big?
I don't think so.
Fish have a limiting factor, that they
Yeah.
don't grow bigger than their environment. Now, in the aquaponics systems that we've found, that they grow bigger than maybe they should, because each fish puts out a certain amount of chemicals in the water. And when the water has its level of chemicals in it, the fish stop growing. And that's how fish self-limit themselves. In this system, we've pulled out of the IBC container. After a year, one of my friends had forgot that this fish was in there, so it must have been little when he closed his system down. Pulled a koi that big out of it.
And we know it froze solid, because it was in Virginia. It froze solid. I mean, the thing
Well, it
was
was
like
in
a
his
mouse.
greenhouse.
Yeah.
But, you know, in a year, a koi had gotten this large
Yeah,
in his tank.
yeah.
So it doesn't limit as much as others.
But it still gives off the appropriate amount of nutrients
Right.
as it self-limits.
Right.
It's-
Right.
And then at that point, you can either move the koi to a larger tank or go ahead and sell them as an income producing and
Yeah.
get more little ones and start over.
Yeah, they're worth a lot of money.
I
Yes.
was going to say about the only kind of ornamental fish you might run into a problem with as far as not being size limited are riverines such as sturgeon,
Mhm.
which you probably will not have in this type of system because the water flow is not gonna be adequate.
Right.
So it should never really be a problem if you're choosing everything
I don't
appropriately.
think that you can raise trout, although I would hate to say that because somebody will do it. But trout require pretty heavy flowing water, and you would have to go to an extra pump and a bigger tank, which is not saying you can't do that, it's just that, why would you?
Trout aren't a good fit for this system.
Yeah.